Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Dr. Mike Brasher.
Today we have a very special episode, and it's special for a number of reasons. One is we actually have 4 people that are going to be participating on this episode. The other reason why it's special is because we have some very special guests. Now we're going to introduce those 2 folks here in a minute, but this is going to be a follow-up discussion, you might say, on something that we discussed earlier in the year, Ducks Unlimited's National Scholarship Program. So we have with us a return guest, Mark Horobetz. Mark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me back, man.
Now remind me your title before we get this here.
Manager of Youth and Education Programs.
I was supposed to know that, but I didn't.
It's okay. I know you're the waterfowl scientist, Mike.
And so then our 2 very special guests on this episode are actually 2 recent winners of our Ducks Unlimited National Scholarships, the 2021 recipients of our National Scholarship. First is McNeill Dinkins. McNeill, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And then next is Max Shackelford. Max, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me as well.
As I mentioned, today we're going to be talking about our National Scholarship Program, recent recipients. We're going to hear firsthand from them on why they got involved in Ducks Unlimited, how they got involved, and what it's like to be recipient of one of these awards. To start out, though, however, Mark, I'm going to come back to you. And first, I will encourage our listeners to go back to January, look up that episode where we talked in detail about the Ducks Unlimited National Scholarship Program. We're not going to cover all of that detail here today. But, Mark, for our new listeners, perhaps give us a high-level introduction to the DU National Scholarship Program. How long has it been around, and what is it?
Sure. Thank you, Mike. So, very, very excited to be here. This is what I absolutely love. One of the things I love most about my role as manager of youth and education programs is working with young men like McNeill and Max. And our varsity chapter program, which is our high school chapter program, really it started growing nationally, I'd say around 2013, 2014. And we realized pretty quickly that these young men and women across the country are raising money for Ducks Unlimited. They're giving their time through sports and school and all the things that they do to give back to our mission. We wanted to recognize them. We wanted to reward them for the time that they put into the Ducks. And so through a lot of discussion and working with our volunteers across the country and our board, we launched the program, the National Scholarship Program, in 2017. And we awarded the first class of scholarships in 2018. And we award 61 scholarships on an annual basis. And these are for graduating high school seniors. And these are for individuals looking to pursue a career in the educational field, whether it be 2-year or 4-year accredited college. And now we even offer it to those that are looking to go to maybe trade school or vocational school. So really, really glad to be here today in this setting with McNeill and Max. And we're starting to see it come full circle. The program was designed to give back to members and volunteers of the organization, and it's doing just that. And it's been a really, really cool program to be a part of. And I just want to thank all the volunteers of Ducks Unlimited and the staff members of Ducks Unlimited that have made this possible.
Absolutely. I echo every bit of that. And Mark, thank you for joining us here. You're going to stay here with us.
I'll be here.
You'll be here, but most of this is going to be a conversation with Max and McNeill about their experiences with this program, and so we're just going to jump in. We're going to jump right in here. McNeill, I want to come to you first, and this is an opportunity to introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us where you come from and how you got involved with Ducks Unlimited.
All right. Well, I was born in Jackson, Mississippi. I love Mississippi, so I've always been an outdoorsman. Like, sports were never my thing. I tried out every single sport I could think of, and none of them really caught on, but the outdoors was my go-to. I've always been like deer hunting, duck hunting, dove hunting, anything, you name it. Ducks Unlimited was my first experience on how I could give back, and I met Stephen Bridwell before he was state chairman and Hunter Pridgeon, and they talked me into starting a varsity chapter at our school, Jackson Academy, that I was very fortunate to go to. That was my first click that I wanted to be part of Ducks Unlimited. And so I started our chapter, and I've been chairman for about 3 years, and we've been going strong. And at the same time, I've been duck hunting and deer hunting with all my friends and my family, and life hasn't really changed, but it has changed in the fact that I have a new family, which is Ducks Unlimited. So that's really how I was brought up. But Ducks Unlimited was always in my life. I just never knew how I could be a part of it. Because, like, you see all the people who wear Ducks Unlimited hats and they have Ducks Unlimited bags and stuff. But once you actually get to, like, meet all the people, you never want to go out. And, like, that's one thing that's, like, been stuck in me is Ducks Unlimited is the place and the family to be a part of.
Max Shackelford, introduce yourself to our listeners. Where are you from, and how did you get involved with Ducks Unlimited?
Yeah, so I'm a bit more local than McNeill. We're sitting in Memphis, Tennessee right now at Ducks Unlimited headquarters, and my house is just about 20 minutes down the road. I've been in Memphis since I was born here. I love this place, and I kind of grew up going hunting with my dad. That's sort of the thing that really got me first on the edge of Ducks Unlimited, at least. But we more focused on dove hunting a lot because we just didn't really have any places to go duck hunting when I was younger. But once I got into high school, one of my best friends became a guy named Will Schusler, and his family is much more of a duck hunting family than our family was. And he started taking my dad and I, and even my little brother, on these hunting trips. And that's sort of how I first got into duck hunting. And then once I became a high schooler, I realized, oh my gosh, there's a Ducks Unlimited club already established here, still in its kind of nascent years. Our club was started back in 2015, back when I was a 7th grader at my school. But as soon as we got on campus, Will and I knew that that was the thing we wanted to do. And we've hit the ground running. And for 6 years, I think we've done a really great job with our club. Together, he and I served as co-chairman of our chapter as juniors. And then this year, as seniors, we sort of took a step back, still sort of staying in the leadership roles unofficially. But officially, our chairman's names were Kerrigan Solser and Dan Schell. But I always like to say that everyone's kind of doing the same job. You're all in the trenches together, raising money for DU, and the chairman's sort of just a title.
I think this is, from so many different angles, this is really cool to have you and many others like you involved in Ducks Unlimited at this age, and really taking a tremendous leadership role at that age. I can think back to whenever I was your age and younger, and we didn't have that. We didn't have our varsity programs. We didn't have our varsity chapters and our university chapters. I guess we probably would have had university chapters. Might have been on the horizon at that point, but I was obviously not associated with any of those until I got to college, of course. But at your age, it did not have even the varsity chapters. So my introduction was through the traditional banquet system. I was a green wing. Did y'all come up did you attend banquets growing up, and were you a Ducks Unlimited green wing?
I attended a few events. My uncle is a really big part of Ducks Unlimited, so he was my real introduction to it. And I knew of the green wing thing going on, but I never had like the card that said I was a green wing. But I knew of it, but that's not what brought me into Ducks Unlimited.
So what about you, Max? Green wing or attend the banquets
I have to
growing up?
confess that my exposure is probably even less than McNeill's. It was really high school when I sort of found this place. Middle school a little bit, mostly high school when it really started to get plugged into it.
I think that's a great testament to the value of these programs. And I mean, we still have our Green Wing program. It's still going strong, and it's certainly a role for that. But this is the age at which people are starting to develop leadership skills, and that's exactly what you guys have. And so we're able to engage you in the conservation field, quite frankly, and raising money to help fund conservation. So that's pretty cool in that regard. So Max, I have a follow-up question. I guess a follow-up question for both of you. So just talk about your experience with the chapter. What have you, I've talked about how you've obviously given through your time and raising money for conservation. Do you feel that you have gained from this process as well? I mean, it's kind of a give and take. Do you think you've benefited from it as much as you have benefited conservation? Max?
I'd have to say absolutely yes, because the guys that I'm participating in my chapter with are some of, like I said, Will Schusler, one of my best friends, and even that extended family of the few of us that are really, really active members. Those are some of my best friends at school. And without them, I mean, I don't know where I'd be. They're just so important to the life that I've built over these last 4 years or even 6 years going back into middle school. Yeah, without Ducks Unlimited, I could have had a very different high school experience because of the people that are involved. It's almost, and I know this may not be the best thing to say about it, but it's almost not even about the money. It's about the experience that you're building together, the memories almost. Because without those, it doesn't seem quite as important.
Well, that's a very common refrain throughout the organization. Many people will say, "I came for the mission, but I stayed for the people," and it sounds like that's kind of what you're experiencing as well. McNeill, do you feel the same way? Have you developed some friendships, some relationships, and maybe some additional skills because of what you've been able to do through the Ducks Unlimited chapter?
100%. I wouldn't say I was the most outgoing person before starting the chapter, and now you probably can't get me to stop talking.
Well,
But
that's why we have Clay monitoring the channels over there. We
exactly.
just turn it down, right?
Yeah. So like a lot of people I've met, like Max said, it's like Brooks McGee, my co-chairman. I had no clue who he was before I started the chapter, and now I consider him one of my great friends. It's just the people you meet and the experience you get is just unmatchable. Like when I started Ducks Unlimited, I didn't expect it to be like my main thing in life. Like obviously I expected to put a lot into it, but I didn't expect it to, like, literally it became my sport. I called it my sport because everyone else had football, baseball. I had Ducks Unlimited. Some people would call me Duck Boy at my school. I wasn't ashamed of it because I love Ducks Unlimited. It just showed you that like people realize what you're doing, and the leadership role it gives you among your peers and with like adults and authority. I can talk to an adult without being intimidated or like hiding behind my dad. Like obviously I shouldn't do that at this age, but like I know people who do, and it gave me so many like benefits and gifts.
That's amazing. I want to talk a little about the chapters themselves, your varsity chapters. As I mentioned earlier, these weren't around whenever I was your age, and we have, Mark, you may have to chime in here and tell me how many of these we have, but we're still kind of early in our varsity chapter program, right, Mark? Is that fair to say? How many do we have across the country? Do you have a number, or you can kind of ballpark it if you don't have the exact number?
Yeah, ballpark, Mike, is around 60
Okay.
across the country. And we've talked about it, largely got the roots of the foundation began in North Carolina, although some will argue the first chapter was actually started in Collierville, Tennessee. So there's a little bit of back and forth on that.
We can always argue.
We can always argue that. But by and large, the program is growing. And I got to tell you, I mean, even just sitting here listening to what Max and McNeill are talking about, I got a little glassy because I've been here 8 years. And when we first started the program, it was just about how many we can get started to try to grow the program. And now, being where I am 8 years into it, it's about getting the opportunity to meet guys like Max and McNeill and to hear their stories and to meet their dad and to hear their passion that they have for the organization and what it's given back to them. And so I feel like we're doing our job. We can always do it better, but this is the best part of my job right here.
For our listeners that may not be familiar with our varsity chapters, tell us, McNeill, I'll give you kind of first shot here, and then Max, you can follow up on any of this later. Tell our listeners about how do they get started. I mean, you're a perfect example here to talk about how something gets started. Who do you bring into this? Is it restricted to certain ages? Who's involved? How much outside help do you get? I mean, and then how many banquets do you put on? What type of events do you? For someone that knows nothing about a varsity Ducks Unlimited chapter, what's your spiel to them?
So our varsity chapter was specifically high school, so 9th through 12th. At our school, it's not very common for clubs to have below 9th grade. So our members are all 9th grade to 12th graders. Starting one, I would never say is easy because that's not the point. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be a challenge. But the people you get help you make it easy. So when I started our chapter, I was a sophomore. I had it was probably my second year at Jackson Academy, or my third real year at Jackson Academy. And I was talking to seniors who I'd never talked to in my life. And as a sophomore talking to seniors, I felt like some little kid. And I had seniors who always had my back. One specifically, Hunter Wilkerson, he was always there with me. And he was a good friend of my older brother who was a junior at the time. But it was a huge part of the chapter. And it's like, all the kids who joined our first chapter and current are the reason the chapter's still alive. I could never say I'm the reason the Jackson Academy chapter exists, because it's all the high school kids who are like, hey, I like that. I wanna be a part of that. And they joined, which helped us a lot. So we went from having maybe 40 members the first year to now we are pushing 100. And it's funny to see also, like, we've only been a chapter for 3 years and we have family lines already in it. So far, I'm a Dinkins and there's been 3 Dinkins in it. And Hunter Wilkerson, who I just mentioned, he was in it. His dad is now our advisor because he works for Jackson Academy and he's been a huge help. I consider him an angel in my life. And his little sister's also in it. So we already have close to 3 generations. And then my little sister is going to be in it next year once she's a 9th grader. So the varsity chapter system is just amazing because it gave all of us, not just me as chairman, but every single high school student who joined it, an opportunity to see into a world they may not have even been a part of in the beginning.
And so, Max, let's talk about I mean, you can follow up on that with anything that you wanted to in terms of. I think the chapter was already established at your school, right? But then the other thing I wanted to hear about are the type of events, the type of fundraising that occurs at the varsity level.
So to quickly sort of share my side of the starting a chapter concept that McNeill just kind of shared, our chapter began the year I got to MUS as a 7th grader. So we've been running for 6 years now. However, I wasn't really involved in setting it up and, going out and recruiting members. We were pretty well established by the time I was old enough to start thinking about that kind of thing. But the type of events we run, and this may be different from chapter to chapter, I'm not really sure. We may have 3 sources of income, I always like to tell people. The first one is a football tailgate. So every year at our rivalry game, MUS versus CBHS, we will have a tailgate and we'll have a raffle ticket sale, cook wild game, all that kind of stuff. And that's sort of a low income event, but it's a good way to kick off the year and get new 9th graders, even 7th graders and 8th graders quickly involved in the club. Because it's really easy to sell raffle tickets. And I will admit, the Ducks Unlimited Club is I would not be able to walk up to a person and ask them for money without having been in the Ducks Unlimited Club. Because that's sort of a skill, maybe not asking for yourself necessarily, but asking for a different organization that you're a part of is an extremely hard thing to do, and it can be extremely daunting. You could end up hiding behind your dad, as McNeill said earlier. And without Ducks Unlimited, I wouldn't have learned that skill. But we start with the football tailgate, and then in the spring we have our banquet, which is very traditional in regards to usual DU banquets, live auction, tier raffle, that kind of thing. And we almost always have it, strangely enough, at DU headquarters because it's so convenient that we live here in Memphis, and DU happens to be located here as well. And then our third source is kind of what political people like to call grassroots fundraising, where you just go out and ask people on a whim, old alumni of MUS that want to give back and happen to be duck hunters as well, even just random dads that happen to have a kid at the school. You can go out and ask them, hey, we don't really have an event going on, but CBHS is kind of beating us by $500 right now. Could you give me $501 so we could be beating them in total fundraising money? So those are sort of the 3 ways that our chapter tends to raise money.
You mentioned rivalry a couple of times, so we kind of have to go there. You mentioned on-the-field rivalries. Do those rivalries spill over to the – well, I know they do because you kind of talked about it. They spill over to the fundraising through Ducks Unlimited if there are varsity chapters at each of those schools, right?
I would honestly admit that the MUS Ducks Unlimited Club and the CBHS Ducks Unlimited Club have a more bitter rivalry than the MUS football team and the CBHS football team. Now, some football players might disagree with me, but they haven't seen some of our DU events, I bet, because it gets pretty intense. We have a trophy. All it is a duck call, and it's got a little wooden base. And on one side, it's MU. It has a big U on it, which is our school symbol. And on the other side, it has a CB on it, which is CBHS's symbol. And each side is a different color. And each of us take that duck call to our spring banquet every year. And if we've got an item that's not really getting bid on, it just isn't really getting any traction with the crowd, the auctioneer will just be like, turn the duck call to the purple side, boys. And purple is CBHS's color. So everyone get a little bit angry and start bidding to make sure that CBHS doesn't win.
McNeill, same thing. You have a rival?
Yes, so Jackson Academy and Jackson Prep's DU chapters are competing. Obviously, it's all fun and games, but similar to what Max said, I would say the Ducks Unlimited chapters have more of a fight than the football teams, and our football teams can get at it. But it's really funny because though our J and Prep chapter are against each other, we both extremely support each other. Because it's all for the same thing. We always say, do it for the Ducks. We all like the same thing. We're all doing the same thing, just in different chapters. It's a rivalry, but we understand that it's all fun and games. And their chairman's one of my great friends. So I can't really get too angry at him.
It's impressive what these groups are able to do. And I have just a couple of numbers here to illustrate that. Remembering that, last year was a crazy year all around, and no aspect of our livelihoods was spared the effects of a global pandemic, right? Fundraising, was certainly challenged in extraordinary ways. Despite all of that, both of your chapters were able to raise money in rather impressive ways. So, McNeill, I think you had an event, maybe in December. How much did y'all raise during that one single event with the pandemic going on in the background?
Yeah, so we usually do our event right before duck season starts. So duck season starts the day after Thanksgiving. So ours was probably the weekend before. This year with COVID, we had a lot of sponsors who were extremely supportive, but they just weren't able to support us with funds. But we raised about $20,000, probably a little bit more with COVID, which was extremely shocking to me because obviously everyone took a huge hit from COVID. But it really showed the DU support that we were able to get, because that's probably some of the most. We only have one event in the fall, and we try doing some stuff in the spring if we can. But in the fall events, our big event, and we probably made more money in COVID than any years where we didn't have COVID.
Wow. And Max, you mentioned that your chapter had several events this past year. Over the course of the year, what amount of funding were y'all able to raise for Ducks Unlimited?
I guess I should clarify that a little bit. This year, we actually were not able to have our football tailgate because we do have to get permission from the MUS administration to have that. And with COVID, they just weren't comfortable.
Yeah, it's good that you clarify that, because we don't want them listening to this and thinking that you held something without permission.
But this year, we were still able to do the Grassroots Fundraising, as I said, and also our spring banquet, because restrictions were beginning to relax, and the school was also more comfortable with having big events with a lot of people involved. So our event this year, would you like a number?
Sure, an approximation if you have it.
So we were looking, I believe our live auction did about $38,000, maybe a bit more. I can't quite remember the exact number. And overall, probably somewhere near $45,000 just at our live auction, or just at our spring banquet this past March. So we always do our event in the spring.
Mark, I may want you to comment on this next question here, but so that was great background and great talk on our varsity chapters, and thank you tremendously for your leadership and your role in those chapters. We're going to talk here a little bit later on about future plans and where Ducks Unlimited is going to factor in your future plans. But right now, I want to talk a little bit about the awards themselves, and you being recipients of those. We had 2 recipients, each of you, of the National Scholarship this year. It's a $10,000 scholarship. Mark, I believe this was the first time we've ever awarded 2 scholarships in one year.
It absolutely was, Mike. And, hats off to our president, Mr. Doug Schoenrock, and to our senior vice president over youth and education, Mr. Harold Cannon. They got together based on the fact that we had a dead heat. You look at these 2 gentlemen and what they've accomplished throughout their varsity career with Ducks Unlimited, but also what they've done respective to their communities and in their schools. And they made the decision that we were going to award 2 this year. And I think it was a very good decision, job well done, and very, very well deserved.
And so I think I also understand that y'all were notified of you being the recipient of this award through a phone call from our president. Is that right? So, Max, what was that like? How did he get your phone number to begin with? I'm sure that's something we took care of on the inside. But were you expecting a phone call from the president of Ducks Unlimited?
Well, Mr. Horobitz had actually texted me that morning, I believe, and said, expect a phone call this afternoon about, it must have been about 2 o'clock or so. I don't quite remember. And I was kind of worried, actually, because I had a test for an award. Like one of our school gives away certain awards based on a score you make on a test, like graduation awards. And I had one of those tests that afternoon at 2 o'clock. So I was sitting in the room watching my phone eagerly, hoping the call would come in a little bit early so that I wouldn't be late or have to walk in a little to the testing room a little bit late. And I suddenly saw a Mississippi area code number come up on my phone at about 1:58 or so. And I got on the phone and I thought it was Mr. Horobitz calling me. And I addressed him as Mr. Horobitz because I guessed he was calling from an office phone or something. But it turned out it was Doug Schillenrock, and he corrected me and then told me, I'm pleased to tell you that you got the scholarship. And I probably squealed a little bit. Probably not one of the most dignified moments, but I was extremely excited to hear about it.
McNeill, you have a similar experience? Did you squeal upon learning that you were the recipient of the national award?
I can't say I squealed, but I was on the way to the doctor with my mom, and Mr. Mark texted me. Or, no, he called me first, and I missed the call because I was in an exam. And then he texted me, and I was freaking out. I was like, oh, I just missed my chance. Like, even if it was one of the, like, smaller scholarships, I still would have been just as excited. Then Stephen Bridwell, the state chairman, I had just met with him actually like 30 minutes before. And he said, hey, you're getting an important call today. Pick up. I was like, okay, yes, sir. Thank you. And so I was in the car with my mom going to the doctor, and Mr. Doug called me, and I answered. I was like, hello. And he told me, just like he told Max, I'm excited to tell you that you got the scholarship. And I didn't squeal, but I definitely had a few tears in my eyes. I didn't want to be given anything back from Ducks Unlimited because this is how I gave back. But when I got it, I can't say I didn't cry, but it was an extremely touching moment. And it was obviously extremely important to me that Mr. Doug called me.
Mark, it's pretty cool sitting across the table from these two guys. You've told me that the competition was intense for these scholarships. These two guys here are pretty dang impressive, and so I'd have to say I don't know what any of the other applicants looked like. These certainly look like deserving recipients of this. It's really. Man, I mean, I think back to whenever I was a graduating senior, and there's no way that I had the level of, and some people will probably say I still don't have the level of maturity and well-spokenness as these two. So I mean, this has to be really thrilling for you. As you said earlier, you almost got a little dusty in here,
Yeah, I did. I did get a little glassy, as my wife calls it, just because you can see what fine young men these are. And I agree with you, Mike. When I look back to my high school career, and the only thing I was worried about was sports and kind of making my grades and where I was going to college. And I wish we'd have had a program like this when I was in high school, but not just with Max and McNeill. I will say I've had the privilege of working with all of our scholarship recipients, and we had 59 other recipients this year. I've received handwritten thank you letters. I've received emails and phone calls, and I actually was able to call some of our varsity scholarship winners at the $500 level, and just to see their appreciation and find out where they're going to school, it's just so humbling and rewarding. And it also gives me a chance to get to know them and also promote our college chapter program, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, but it's so cool to be able to see the natural progression. Max coming up through 7th and 8th grade to the high school program, and McNeill starting a chapter, and then, going to college. I'm sure there will be opportunities for them to get involved there as well.
Mark, that's actually a great segue into that very thing. I want to talk about that right now, about the university chapters. And so you're both graduating seniors, and as Mark mentioned at the outset, these are scholarships to be applied towards secondary education in various forms, whether 4-year or 2-year or technical schools now. So, Max, let me go start with you. What are your future plans? And tell us if there is a Ducks Unlimited University chapter that's part of that.
Yeah, so I'm headed to Davidson College right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, this fall. And currently, Davidson does not have an established Ducks Unlimited club, unfortunately. However, they do have a pretty, a very active Davidson Outdoors program, camping, hiking, that kind of thing, which makes sense with where they're located right near the Appalachian Mountains and lots of easy access to nature and all of that. So I can't imagine that should be very difficult to find some kindred spirits up there. And maybe a Ducks Unlimited Club is in the cards in the next 4 years to get started up at Davidson. I would really love to stay connected with the organization as a whole. And if it's not possible to get a solid club started at Davidson, then just going to events in North Carolina and giving back however I can. I'll do my best to continue with that at least.
Well, you certainly have good connections within Ducks Unlimited here, and it shouldn't be any problem at all to hook you up with the regional director in that area and kind of give you a good head start on getting that chapter going. And what are your plans in terms of study? I just want to learn a little bit more about you, your personal interests and educational aspirations here.
Yeah, so I studied Latin for the last 5 years.
I was not expecting that.
A lot of people don't. It's kind of a weird thing that not a lot of people don't do anymore, but I really love doing it, probably because I didn't have to speak very much, which is nice. In fact, I didn't have to speak at all when you're in Latin, just writing and reading, which is very attractive to me because speaking another language seems like an insurmountable task when you're at the beginning. So I would probably continue with Latin in college, at least with a minor, and then probably a major in English, with intent to either go work at a publishing company, publishing novels, being an editor, hopefully, or teaching in some capacity, high school, college, whatnot.
That's excellent. McNeill, let's go to you now and tell us about your future plans. And is there a university chapter as part of that?
So at Mississippi State, I'm going to Mississippi State. They do have a chapter, and they also have a rivalry with Ole Miss. So I'll be hopping on board that train and hoping we can give Mississippi State some wins in their little competition they have going on. I'm very excited about being a part of their chapter and continuing my time with Ducks Unlimited. I'll be hopefully double majoring in industrial engineering and entrepreneurship at Mississippi State. I'm very excited about that. Not my whole life I haven't been excited about going to college. I've always loved Mississippi and Jackson, and I love my hometown. So leaving too far for too long has never been like a thing I've been excited about. But getting to see all the stuff I'm gonna be able to do, and honestly, even Mississippi State DU chapter is like an enticement. I'm ready for a new chapter in life, and Mississippi State is that place for me.
And I think you will find that there's probably somebody associated with that current Ducks Unlimited chapter at Mississippi State that's going to have something in common with you. Last year's recipient of our national award, Betsy Newble, she's still involved in our university chapter there at Mississippi State. So we're going to start wrapping up now, but I do have a couple of, or at least one follow-up question for each of you. And so you've each had multiple years where you've spent as associated with the Ducks Unlimited varsity chapters. And so here is, I guess, a couple of things. Here is your chance to sell a listener that may be thinking about that, maybe hearing this and saying, how do I get involved in that? Maybe I want to, maybe I don't. Max, what's your pitch to that person? And you can to encourage them to find a way to get involved, and you can reference any story or favorite memory or favorite experience of yours as the reason for doing so.
Yeah, so we kind of started talking about community, and the the major reason that I really loved being a part of the MUS Ducks Unlimited Club was because of the connections and relationships that I had there, and some of my best friends ended up being a part of that club. And honestly, that's the easiest way to pitch it. And I guess I'll give you one story from, I guess it must have been my sophomore or freshman year. I sound like an old man talking about it, I guess.
Happens quick. It happens quick.
It wasn't that long ago, but it feels like it was a long time ago. And so it was one of those 2 years. We were out on the football stadium selling raffle tickets. We had a deadline for when we were going to start pulling tickets to give away prizes, or to at least decide who had won the prizes. And all the tickets, just this really long piece of paper, and you write down your email address, phone number, name, rip it up, take the money from the person, and move on. But the bucket was kind of low. It didn't really seem like we had sold all that many tickets. We still had a bunch left, a bunch of blank tickets. So basically what we did was we gave the seniors, upperclassmen, just handed blank raffle tickets to younger kids and said, go use your cute faces, your high voices, whatever, and ask moms for $10 bills out of their purses. So I must have gone out there and sold at least 15 or 20 more raffle tickets and had to go back and get a couple more. By the time we were done, the bucket was full. I mean, it was hilarious. It got to the point where you'd walk out and your pen would run out of ink. Because, I mean, they gave us those cheap Ducks Unlimited pens that you use at the front desk. I mean, it's just the little plastic ones, the green skinny ones. That are really good if you're just like signing your name. But man, if you're having 25 people sign a raffle ticket, eventually something's got to run. You'd have to go back constantly because people were, I mean, when you get into that situation at a football game, tension's running high, the game's going on, and some kid asks you for $10, you just kind of do it. That was a great memory.
Pay you $10 just to
shut up.
Yeah. There's all sorts of different tactics to be played, right? McNeill, kind of the same question to you. What are you telling people, and have you told people as the reason why they should get involved, and including any of the favorite stories or memories that you would have experienced over the past 3 or 4 years?
So everyone thinks of Ducks Unlimited as like a hunting club at our school. There's a lot of hunters in the club, but so I always get asked, I don't hunt. I don't duck hunt. Like I wouldn't fit in this club. I'm just like, it's not a hunting club. It's a conservation club. And a lot of people, you'd think they joined to be like just for a resume booster, but then you see them like they don't even hunt. Like they've never been in like the duck hunting like niche of the world. And they see all these people and it's a whole new world for them. So that's like one thing I've loved seeing is people like it's almost like experiencing a different culture. It kind of is. And so it's incredible to see like the people's like eyes light up when they see all these super cool things. I have one friend, never duck hunted, never considered duck hunting in his life. He probably killed more ducks than me this year. And I duck hunt a lot. And so it's just like getting out in the community and having that support. I have more contacts in my phone now than I could ever imagine having before starting the chapter. And I have plenty of stories, but one of my favorite stories is our second event ever. We probably had 150, 200 people show up to our event. And it was during the live auctions, and it was two people going at it for one item. I believe it was probably the gun of the year or one of the guns. And it went 500, 600, 700, 800. And eventually this dad let his kid start bidding. So his kid, probably 11, maybe a little younger than that, was flipping the ticket. And it got up to 900. The opposing guy flipped his ticket, and our auctioneer, Dwight, he said 1,000. That kid flips the ticket, and the dad goes, no. And the thing is, I think it was for one of the chances. So we would have like 10 duck calls for a chance at the gun of the year. Yep, that's what it was. I just remembered it. Oh my gosh. And so he paid $1,000 for a duck call, technically.
Yeah.
And his dad, luckily, his dad was a really good sport, and we really appreciate the support of his dad. His dad's been at all of our events since, and his dad paid the money. But it was definitely a scary event because the kids started crying and stuff, and like even Dwight, our auctioneer, who was actually our previous state chairman before Stephen Bidwell, even Dwight was like, "Sir, are you sure about that?" And but it was all for the Ducks. So eventually it all turned out great. And I was called to console the kid, and I'm actually good friends with the kid now. He's obviously older a little bit, but we all smile and laugh at that same story now.
It sounds like that kid is destined to be the next chair of a varsity chapter for Ducks Unlimited, right?
I hope so. We'll see what happens.
That's the kind of skill that you need to have, right?
Exactly.
To raise money for conservation. I thought that was a great message, though, that you used there, McNeill, to say it's not a hunting club. Don't think of it that way. It's a conservation club, and that really is what Ducks Unlimited is about. We're established by hunters and have hunters as the core of our base and of our membership, and always will be. But wetland conservation that benefits waterfowl benefits a host of other people as well. And I mean, it's just people like to be part of something bigger than themselves, and Ducks Unlimited provides an avenue for that through the conservation of wetlands, which benefit us from the standpoint of hunting and waterfowl populations and a whole host of other things, clean water, and people that are associated with Ducks Unlimited are hearing that message more and more now. And so it's really cool that you are at at your young age are already using that same message. It is really about the conservation that provides a diversity of benefits. So, guys, this has really been cool. It's been neat to have you all here in Memphis. Thanks for coming in and joining us for this episode. Thanks tremendously for your leadership with the varsity chapters over the years. Hopefully, Max, you'll be able to get involved in a chapter. Maybe you'll start a chapter at Davidson, or otherwise get involved in a local chapter in proximity to that. And McNeill, certainly at Mississippi State, look forward to your involvement there. I make it down to Mississippi State every now and then. It seems like I have some friends that are always associated with that chapter, and so about every year I get an invitation to come down and attend one of the banquets. I've not been able to do so yet, but maybe I will. Maybe I'll run into you there again. But Mark, any final words from you? Thank you for joining us here. I do want to say that, and thank you for all the work that you've done with regard to the varsity chapters, and our university chapters as well. Any final words from you?
No, I just appreciate y'all having me, and again, congratulations. It's an honor to be able to meet both of you in person. Max, I've being from Memphis and seeing you at some events, but McNeill, first time I met you and your father, John, who drove you up here, I guess it would be up here from Jackson. But really, really just so proud of both of you and what you guys represent for Ducks Unlimited and for your communities and for your families. So thank y'all.
Max, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
McNeill, same to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. This is awesome.
A special thanks to our guests on today's episode, McNeill Dinkins and Max Shackelford, the recipients of the 2021 Ducks Unlimited National Scholarships. Also thank our other guest here, Mark Horobetz with Ducks Unlimited's Youth and Education Program. And as always, we thank our producer, Clay Baird, for the great work that he does here on the podcast and getting these out to you. And then, of course, to you, the listener, we thank you for your time and joining us, and we thank you for your support, passion, and commitment to wetlands and waterfowl conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. And visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the Ducks.